So, without further ado, I will introduce the four candidates. Starting on the left is Gary Holman. Next to him is Stephen Roberts. Next along is Adam Olson. And next to me is Scott McEachran, who's the independent candidate. So I'm going to start with Gary and ask him to take 2.5 minutes to tell us about himself and his platform. Maddie, just give it another half turn. There you go. No, just keep going. Other way, other way. Okay, now press start. You have to press on. Got it. You're on.
Thanks, David. Wow, this is a great turnout for an afternoon on Salt Spring. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming to the Salt Spring Forum and the Driftwood and, of course, the high school for sponsoring this, and greetings to my fellow candidates. My name is Gary Holman. I've lived on Salt Spring for 24 years down at the south end near Ruckle Park. I'm an economist by background, worked for 25 years as a consulting economist, including the fisheries component of the Nisga'a Treaty, and on about a dozen land use plans throughout British Columbia where the NDP doubled parkland. I served as Salt Springs Capital Regional District Director for 6 years, started the bus system on Salt Spring, which I'm very proud of. I've also served on the boards of the Land Conservancy of BC and the Salt Spring Island Conservancy. I'm running in this election, as I did in 2009, to change the provincial government in this province, which in my view has lost its way, has lost sight of the public interest. And in 2009, I came within 1% of winning this seat for the NDP, came within 260 votes of a long-standing Liberal cabinet minister, Murray Cole, who's now retired. It's so important that we change the channel at the provincial level in so many different respects, and the questions that you ask will reveal the kinds of policies, the platform that the NDP is going to be putting forward and how it differs from the other parties. But I'm very, very proud of the platform we've put together. It's balanced, and it's going to result in benefits for British Columbians from all income groups, all ages. It will protect the environment better. It will enhance social justice in this province, and it will actually improve the economy. And as an economist, I strongly believe that if we protect our economy, if we help those who need help, if we support the vulnerable, it's not just the right thing to do, we're all better off. We're all better off as a community, as a society. Our economy will grow more strongly. And, you know, in the 1990s, you've heard probably myths about the NDP government in the 1990s. Our economy grew faster in the 1990s.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Stephen, you're up.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Roberts, and I'm your BC Liberal candidate this election. It's great to be here. It's great to see this fantastic turnout. And thank you in particular today for the Students' Council of the Gulf Island Secondary School for sponsoring this event. It's great to see that you are engaged as a student population, and it's actually your world to inherit, and so you are congratulated for being involved today. I grew up here on Salt Spring myself. I was born in Sydney, but when I was 1, my parents moved over. My mother worked at the Lady Minto Hospital as a nurse. My father was on the Long Harbour Ferry. So I know a little bit about this island. My older brothers and sisters were at the high school when it was located where the middle school is now, up on the hill. I attended Salt Spring Elementary, which is the same building you see over there, and it looked pretty much exactly the same when I was a kid there. I'm from a family of 6, 3 brothers, 3 sisters. We had a fantastic life here on Salt Spring, and I can appreciate what you young people here today enjoy about this great island, and those people who have come since also have come here to enjoy. But in this election, we face a stark choice. We have to decide ourselves as electors whether or not we're going to embrace some of the opportunities that British Columbia has, or whether we're going to say no to just about every development project that's out there. We can actually say yes. We can embrace environmental sustainability and technology, and we can challenge our young people to study and go to university, to become engineers, to become technicians, to become the people that are going to make British Columbia a world leader in environmental stewardship. We can learn how to make things work environmentally. We can do it in a friendly way. We can build some of those pipelines that we need to be prosperous. We can get our resources out to our markets in Asia, where I spent much of my career in finance. And we can become a world leader, ensuring that British Columbia is prosperous going into the future. And it's going to be up to you guys to decide that. Do you want to embrace that? Do you want to take your creativity, your genius, your ability, your intelligence, and the things you're going to learn at university after you finish at school here, do you want to take those and put them to work for British Columbians? Building a better province. Not saying no to everything that comes up, but finding a better way, finding a better solution. I'm back here now because this is a fantastic place to live. Thus far, we've ensured the province is prosperous, and we've protected our environment with things like the carbon tax. We have to keep doing those things. A BC Liberal government is going to keep doing those things. Thanks for being here with me today, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up is Adam, but he has given me his bio, so I will just tell you who he is. He's a 37-year-old member of the Tsartlip First Nation and was raised on the reserve in Brentwood Bay. He is married to Emily. They have 2 small children, 5-year-old Silas Wolf and 11-month-old Ella Rose. Adam was a 2-term Central Saanich councillor until he resigned in January to run in the provincial election. He's a communications professional and worked on Elizabeth May's communications team. He is a partner in 3 small businesses and understands the challenges of local entrepreneurs. Okay, Adam.
Good afternoon. 2 years ago, we elected Elizabeth May. Today, 2 years ago today. As we have seen every day since, Greens have had an important place in our democracy. We are the democratic conscience. I'm proud to be a part of a positive political movement that is growing in our region and that is needed for our planet. On the Saanich Peninsula, in Greater Victoria, Salt Spring, the Southern Gulf Islands, we have grown a grassroots support to govern differently. We are poised to elect the next generation, but we cannot fall back to the last generation's voting strategies. We celebrated together when Mr. Dix broke from his principled stance on Kinder Morgan last week to state that Metro Vancouver was not going to become a major oil exporting port. We cheered when he stated that 9-fold increases of tanker traffic is not in our interest. The Greens were an important factor in his change in principle. The fact that Greens continue polling high in Saanich North in the Islands and Oak Bay Gordon Head, the threat of the Greens breaking the monopoly on Vancouver Island has inspired that change. But our job is not done. All we have is an NDP campaign promise, which is precisely why we need to elect Greens into that legislature on May 14th. Our top-down parties control their MLAs. Their discussions are held behind closed doors. Greens can ensure that government is held to account in public. What about the other environmental, social, and economic challenges that face our times? Who's going to publicly push government to act on fish farms before 2020?
We're going to have to wait for the answer. You're out of time. Thank you. We've already turned the volume down. We have turned the volume down. Maybe too low. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to come. My name is Scott McEachran. I'm the independent candidate for the Saanich North and the Islands. I am no different than all of you people out here. I get up very early in the morning, I go to work, and at the end of the day, and my bills come in, I try to make all the ends meet. The problem that we have seen with the British Columbia governments in the past many, many moons is once they get in there, your voices all go quiet, all go silent, and they never want to hear from us ever again until 4 years, and then they're back on this stage and they give this little speech. I'm here to represent you, all of you. When I go out there, I want to hear the issues that you have, not what these candidates have, what you people have, because it's important. As we move forward, there is so much going on that people up here just lose what's going out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to you. I have 2 ears and I have a mouth. It's also a time right now for the independent parties to go places. Right now there's 35 independents running in 34 ridings. Vicki Huntington made a big statement 4 years ago when she beat out Wally Opo. And she went into the parliament and she started to make changes. There was a couple NDPs and a couple Liberals that switched over as independent candidates, and they're also making statements out there. Things can really make changes. I believe, ideally, the best thing that could happen to British Columbia right now is we go into a minority government, not a majority. So with your support on May the 14th, if you elect me, I will become your ears and your mouth. Thank you.
Thank you all. I would just like to acknowledge the sponsors of this event, which is the Salt Spring Forum and the Driftwood. And there are, although the venue is provided, there are expenses in videotaping and this event, and it's going to be posted on the web so that people who are not able to make it in the middle of the afternoon can hear what went on. So if you enjoy this event, if you appreciate being able to have it, it would be great if you could drop a loonie or a toonie or a $5 bill or even more in the hat on the way out as you go. That will make this sort of thing more possible in the future. Thank you. All right, so we move on to the questions from the floor, and we're starting off the top with 4 students. Student number 1. Would you please, all of you, say your name when you start to ask your question? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dexter Nash, and I'm in the 10th grade. I just wanted to ask you guys, what is your position on the construction of both the Northern Gateway Pipeline and the Kinder Morgan Pipeline?
Thanks for your question. With respect to the Northern Gateway, we are unequivocally opposed to that, although we do need to subject it, in fact, both pipelines, to a Made in BC environmental review process. Kinder Morgan has still not submitted their application. We do have a general sense of what they're proposing, but they haven't submitted the application yet. We haven't seen all of the evidence yet for that proposal. But Adrian Dix, I think this is what Adam was referring to, made some remarks the other day which suggested that he doesn't see that the future for Vancouver should involve the expansion of bitumen exports through Vancouver, but all proponents deserve due process, and we will subject both of those projects to a Made in BC environmental review. The Liberals.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you. Stephen.
Thanks for your question, Dexter. Obviously an excellent question given some of the challenges and decisions we have to make in British Columbia. Our Premier and our party has been clear on the Northern Gateway Pipeline. There's 5 conditions we have to meet before we could even consider the pipeline. And as you may know, those are that they must pass the environmental review process, they must be agreed by First Nations communities in the north, they must also have state-of-the-art on-land and in-sea spill response mechanisms in case there is an accident. And finally, British Columbia has to get a share of some of the benefits that accrue from that pipeline. All of those things have to happen before we can even consider it. So we need to see a proposal. Our environment in the north is not negotiable, but we do have to consider undertaking projects that could benefit the province if they're done properly. On Kinder Morgan, I think we're generally supportive. As you may know, Kinder Morgan's pipeline is a twinning of an existing pipeline. We already have many pipelines that run through British Columbia. The new Kinder Morgan pipeline would be state-of-the-art and would be a twinning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The Green Party is the only party that is unwavered in our opposition to pipelines and to the increase or to the current oil transportation, bitumen transportation off the west coast of British Columbia and Canada. We stand on that position. And we look forward to being in the legislature to hold this, whatever government is elected, to account on that position, because we stand with British Columbians on that, and the polls have shown that for the last number of years. My experience in government suggests that we should take a position in advance, because it saves a lot of money and it lets those companies know where they can put their money and where they can invest. And I would also say that we need to take a stand on the bitumen that is being transported off our coast right now, today, this week, that nobody, opposition or government, has been talking about, and it has been increasing. And we have not had a discussion about that, and that is not appropriate.
Thank you.
Dexter, this is a great question. And you know what? You're not going to get the right answers no matter what happens. It's going to be a long time before the answer is going to come out on this. However, just so you know, I'm actually in favor of it. I think what's going to have to happen, though, there's going to be two processes before I put my ink to that paper. The first would have to be is it has to be environmentally approved by not only just us, but British Columbia, but of all of Canada, because this is a deal for all of Canada. Secondly, there has to be us that's going to put the refinery up. I don't want these jobs, and I don't want this oil and all this stuff to be exported overseas or whatever. We need to look after us, Canadians, first. And then at that point, we should look at outside of the world. So that's what I would do. But it has to make all the environmental standards and everything of Canada first.
Thanks a lot. All right. Next question from the student.
Hi. I'm Laura Nutter, and I'm a grade 12 student. I would like to know what your vision for education in BC is, specifically what you're planning in regard to the BC Ed Plan. Thanks.
BC what?
To BC what?
The BC Education Plan.
Okay, Stephen, do you want to start? Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Lorna. Also a great question. My vision for education and our party's vision for education is that we equip our students with the skills they're going to need in the world outside there. We're going to equip them with the skills that are going to help them build a prosperous future for their families and for this province. I recently spoke with a University of Victoria engineering graduate who was here at the Saturday market visiting, and he's an environmentalist like you and like me, and he's concerned about our natural environment, but he's also an engineer and he has new skills, and he's up for the challenge of getting out there and getting to work on building things that will build our future, that won't damage our environment, but that will bring prosperity to this province. So I think we want to get behind people like that who are up for that challenge, who are up for making British Columbia a world-leading place for environmental invention. This is the kind of thing that we can do in this province. We can be world-leading. We've taken things like the carbon tax, and we're the first people in North America to do that. We can lead the way, and it's going to be young people like you in education, fully supported by government with skills training and educational in the tertiary institutions that are going to take us forward. So absolutely supportive of helping you get there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Lauren. The Green Party has always seen that education is a fundamental building block, of course, of a very strong and resilient society. It is not all about money, it's how we deploy our resources. Talking with a former principal of mine who's now works in the Saanich School District, one of the things that he told me was that we need to be co-locating services within our school systems. Rather than just replicating health services and social services in schools that are being housed other places, we should be putting them in the same place. So rather than putting more money into education, we can be using resources that we already have in our communities and using our schools as places to house them so that the teachers have the resources that they need. I believe we need to support students, we need to support teachers, and we need to support our schools. We need to make sure they're safe places to learn.
Thank you.
All right, once again, that's a great question. Like the other two colleagues on here, yes, we do need to support. We need to give back and really look at the whole program and to make sure that you get all the tools that you need to go into post-education, because it's extremely important. You guys are our future. There is no doubt about it. If you look at this, the demographics of this around you, it's an aging population, and we need the youth to carry on for us. So if I'm there, I'm going to do my best to help you get the tools that you need for post-graduation. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary?
Thanks for the question. Both my daughters went to school here on Salt Spring, and one of them has just gotten her teacher's certificate. So this question hits home for me, as it does for most people. Look, it's fine, the rhetoric around public education and the need for more resources. We all support that, I'm sure, personally. The question is, how are you actually going to do it? So I would really encourage you to look at the NDP platform, bcndp.ca. We're going to be spending substantial additional dollars on providing classroom supports, more teachers, teaching assistants, counselors, librarians, all of which have been cut by this Liberal government. We're also going to be investing substantial dollars in post-secondary skills and education training so that students can go through school and be trained for the jobs of the future. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we're actually going to increase taxes, which for the last decade have starved the provincial government from being able to fund supports like this. Large corporations, banks, incomes over $150,000, and broadening the corporate tax. So rhetoric is fine. The question is, how are you going to pay for it? Look at our platform and see how we're going to do that.
Thank you, Gary. Hi, Maddie.
Hi. Thank you guys for being here and for bearing with me through all of this setup and whatnot.
Fantastic job.
Yeah, thank you. My question to you is, ferry transportation is a huge concern for islanders and especially for youth. So if elected, how do you plan to ensure that ferry services become a more sustainable and affordable service? Thank you.
Thanks, Maddie. First of all, I do have a problem with just kicking the problem 2 years down the road. I think even if you just hold the line on the fares at this point, it is going to mean an increase at some point down if we don't actually deal with the situation. I think that there is considerable need in investing in the infrastructure and the vessels that are, and this is a problem that the NDP government saw in the 90s and that the Liberal government saw in the 2000s, and so they decided to try to privatize it. We saw that that didn't work. We've got aging vessels, so the increasing fares that we see right now for operational costs are actually going to be exacerbated by the replacement of the vessels which are right in front of us. I think we need to take a look at a water taxi system. I was down on the waterfront here, and there's taxis that are sitting there empty. We need to have water buses connected with Sydney so that we can start to create a system that is everywhere around the world.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Maddie. BC Ferries definitely is a major concern on these islands. I read a report the other day from Gordon Wilson that made it quite interesting. I'm not sure if you know this or not, but 20% of all British Columbians depend on the ferries one way or another. That's over 900,000 of us, 900,000 strong. There's a number of things that we can do. And just when I was on the BC Ferries coming over here, I was just thinking, we always seem to sit there and complain and the ferries keep going up. And don't get me wrong, I paid a lot coming over here as well. And I'm thinking, wow, how can we take this system and actually just improve on it? Let's not add any more cost to it. Just how can we actually get some more funding out of this system? And as I was just sitting there, I was looking at, these are moving billboards. Just think if we could do something with just these boats as billboards, how much money could we raise? Anyway, it's just a thought as I was just riding there. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
Thanks for the question. The NDP have committed $40 million over a 3-year period to freeze fares for BC Ferries. And that's not the solution, but that's to give us some breathing room, to give us time to examine the possibilities for reducing costs in BC Ferries. If you look at their senior management, their senior administration has more than tripled over the last 10 years. Under the Liberal leadership on this file, BC Ferries have been transformed from a basic, affordable public transportation system to a failed cruise line. So the other areas that we're going to be looking at, Adam mentioned the cost of new bills. That will be a significant factor. One of the things we're going to be looking at is using natural gas in new ferries. which will reduce operating costs and also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I've served on the Ferry Advisory Committee here on Salt Spring for 6 years. The reason those fares are frozen is...
Thanks, Gary. Stephen.
Thank you, Maddie, for what's probably one of our most controversial questions here on the islands. I'm from Salt Spring, as I said earlier. I grew up here. My father worked on the Long Harbor Ferry. The last thing I would ever want to see would be a service cut that would eliminate routes from this island to get to the mainland. BC Ferries is an integral part of our provincial transportation system. We should be treating it that way. In the last number of years, we have improved service. We have improved the vessels that we have, but unfortunately that's come at a cost, and I think that cost is too high for islanders and people in our coastal communities. In my perspective, the subsidy that the provincial government provides for BC Ferries is not sufficient. We fund transit in our big cities. We also fund highways into the interior and to places like Whistler. For the people of these islands, the citizens, the residents, and the businesses, it's become too expensive. The health of our coastal communities, the health of those of us who live here on Salt Spring Island in terms of business and economic development are impaired by the cost of ferries. We have to reduce that. We have to increase the subsidy from the provincial government and treat this more like we do the highways and more like we do transit in our big cities. And that's what I'll be fighting for in Victoria as a representative from this riding.
Thank you. One more student question, and just before you start, we're going to go immediately into questions from the floor, so there's 2 mics. Line up at the mics and we'll take them in, alternately. Please go ahead.
All right, thank you for coming. My name's Cole Smith. I'm a grade 12 student here. A dramatic global decrease in the ratio between working class people and retired people is imminent. So I was wondering what you are planning to do to combat this challenge and how you can sustain and even improve our economy over this period. Thanks.
That's a great question, and it's going to be extremely difficult if we keep on the same path that we are today. First thing we need to do is look within ourselves with the government and say, you know what, we bring in enough money to cover all the bills that go on. Since 2008, when all the economy started to collapse around us, you know, everybody in here probably all said to ourselves, you know what, we got to make ends meet. We got to stop what we're doing and just making sure that we can pay our bills at the end of the month. The only people that stopped doing that was the government. They kept spending money left, right, and center, and it doesn't really seem to matter. And for some of them, they still want to continue to do it. They want to add more budget or more deficit to our budget. So as we move forward, it's going to take us even longer to pay it all off. And in some cases, most of the people in here, and including myself, probably won't be on this land because they'll still have a massive deficit. It's going to be very difficult, but it has to go back to all of us. We all have to work together so that way then we can get jobs and get everything rolling, but we have to do it economically proper. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
Thanks. We do have an aging demographic, which is going to pose challenges, particularly in our healthcare system. I think skills training will play an important role here. We need to make sure that the jobs of the future can be filled by local residents as opposed to bringing in temporary workers from foreign countries. Immigration is a very important part of sustaining our workforce, of enhancing our workforce. You know, the debate around taxes, the NDP, again, look at the NDP platform. Tax fairness is really an important issue here. Corporations, banks, high-income individuals need to be contributing more to our tax base in this province. And it's a matter of fairness, and it won't slow down the rate of growth in the economy. It's a matter of fairness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cole, for your question. That's obviously a really difficult one, and it's something the entire planet faces, an aging population with fewer young people. How are the many retired people and seniors supposed to be supported by an increasingly small population of working people? How is that going to work? We see in places like Japan, where the aging population is growing more rapidly than just about anywhere else, that they're having difficulties making their budgets meet. In Canada, we're somehow much better off. Our population is dependent on immigration, and immigration eases that burden for us. But as a planet, we face that consequence. We face this problem. It's going to be difficult for us to just spend our way out of it. We're going to have solutions that are a little more complex than that. We're going to have productivity improvements. We're going to have to be able to do things better. We're going to have to do more with less. We're going to have to rely on our youth, the bright individuals who are going to be coming after us, to figure out ways to make us work better, where we can use the same resources with fewer people, because we're going to be supporting an increasingly aging population. And that's a train that's coming right at us. We're going to have to think about it. So thanks for the question.
Thanks a lot, Cole, for the question. And I see the lineups are getting long. Wow. I think, I'm a small business owner, and I think that most of the people in this province actually work in small business and in communities, in the communities that we live in. Certainly, as time has gone on here on the Gulf Islands, and the many people that I've talked to about the local economies on the Gulf Islands, that there's been stress here. There's also stress on the Saanich Peninsula and stress in Greater Victoria region. And I think that one of the things that got me on this, sitting at this table, was the fact that when I went to both the Liberal finance minister and the opposition House leader and asked them, what are you going to do for our communities? As a councillor in Central Saanich, I asked them, what are you going to do for our communities? And they said, the cupboards are bare. I realized that we're actually in this situation where these parties want to fund their priorities, their platform, their agenda. They don't actually want to ask what our problems are here.
Thank you. All right, now we move on. Just remember, I can see the clock, you can't, but you have 30 seconds, and I am going to cut you off, so ask them fast. We'll start over here. Please identify yourself before you ask.
Okay, my name's Kurt Firestone. The question simply is, the Salt Spring Driftwood has reported about the shortage of family physicians on Salt Spring Island. VHA has announced that Lady Minto Emergency Room is overloaded and we should seek care other places. If you are elected MLA, what will you do to resolve the healthcare medical issue on our island?
Thank you. Gary.
Thanks for the question. Look, it comes back to funding. And if you look at the NDP platform, we are promising funding specifically allocated for restoration of rural healthcare services, which not just on Salt Spring, but throughout the province have been reduced, have been degraded. Communities throughout the province are actually losing their hospitals. I am concerned about doctors. We will be providing more funding for that, and our platform, unlike the Green platform, is fully costed, so we'll be telling you how we do that. But it's so important. The other thing about doctors is aside from the health considerations, it's a really important part of our economy to have doctors here, because otherwise people can't move here, won't move here, and can't stay here because they can't get those basic services available to them.
Thanks, Gary. Stephen.
Thank you, Kurt. Lady Minto Hospital is a fantastic facility. The kind of care that you get there versus the care you might receive in some of our bigger city hospitals is tremendous. You get care, you get attention, and you get it pretty quickly, much more so than you would in many of our big cities. So supporting community hospitals like this is an imperative. We have a problem attracting doctors here, or so the Vancouver Island Health Authority tells us. I think there's lots of doctors in other places that would be interested in small community service like this. What we really need is attention to this. We need to focus on it. We need to attract people. You've got two gentlemen here sitting at this table who are from this island. There can't be anyone more serious about getting medical services on this island for all of us here. Electing an MLA from your local neighborhood is really something that's going to have an impact, I think. You might want to consider that when you're considering your vote, because we've seen it before. Murray Cole brought us a national marine park and conservation area that we're developing in the Gulf Islands. That's because he was a local concerned MLA. Here you've got an opportunity to vote for somebody from Salt Spring who's got Salt Spring's interests at heart. And doctors on this island is something I can get behind.
Thank you for the question, Kurt. And I think that, in the Green Party platform, we do talk about providing increased and new training programs for healthcare professionals so that we are training more doctors. I think we should facilitate and recognize the qualification of foreign doctors, foreign-trained doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals. I know that when I was getting a ride from the hotel in Vancouver to the ferry, that I was sitting in the car with a medical doctor who was trained elsewhere in the world, and he was driving my cab. I think that's unacceptable, the way that we have treated those folks. I think we should also provide payback incentives for graduating doctors. And we should encourage folks as they're coming out of school to be moving and working in rural communities like the Gulf Islands. And we should be providing incentives for them to be doing that. And this is a problem not just here, it's a problem on the Saanich Peninsula, and it's a problem in many communities right across the province.
Thank you.
Kurt, thank you for your question. I think the BC medical industry is the biggest onion that we've got. I think that it's got thousands and thousands and thousands of layers of problems in there. And I think that we have to start from the very scratch and say, we need to, gosh, it's a huge problem, there's no doubt. And this isn't the only community that is losing its physicians. I think what we have to do is we have to look at it all. We have to say to ourselves, how do we improve this system? How do we make it better? Because there's no reason in the world that nobody would not want to come and move to Salt Spring Island to be a doctor. Because this is one of the most beautiful places in British Columbia, without a doubt. So I think we have to start right from the top and look down and say, okay, every layer of every expense that we put into this, how do we improve it to make it better for not just for us here in the southern Gulf Islands, but also all of British Columbia.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, next question from this microphone.
I want to bring this back to BC Ferries, and I want to acknowledge the excellent question from, I forget your name, a student. And because she asked, as part of her question, sustainable solutions. Sustainable solutions is the other side of the coin for BC Ferries.
What's the question? You've got 5 seconds.
So my question is, considering that the
Ask
federal...
the question.
Okay. Are you aware of the social cost of driving for BC that the BC government spends?
Thank you. Okay, we start. Stephen.
Sorry, I'm aware of the social what?
Costs of driving.
The social cost of driving. Absolutely, there's a social cost of driving. Unfortunately, we live in a large province. We have disparate communities in many different parts of that province, and the best way for us to get around is by vehicle. If we densify our cities, as we have programs and proposals to do, such as in Vancouver and in Victoria, we can reduce that. We can reduce it with transit too, but we're not going to be able to get around the fact that we have 1 million square kilometers of territory in British Columbia, and the best way to reach that is often by road. Many people here on Salt Spring, and we'd like to say that we have a small carbon footprint on Salt Spring, but we all have to drive from various ends of this island to get into the town center. It's not economical to run a bus every day, all through the hours of the day. You have to do it just occasionally because people aren't on them. So what can we do about that? We can try to reduce dependency. We can maybe take cars that use better fuel, but cars are the things we're going to have to work with for the moment, unfortunately. We have to make them better so that they have less impact on the environment, but
Thank you.
Even on this island, that's the case.
Adam.
Yeah, there is a tremendous social and there's a tremendous environmental cost to people driving vehicles. And of course, we have started to see some other vehicles powered by other means as they started to proliferate in our communities, absolutely. In terms of ferries, I think our ferry system is a ferry based around moving vehicles and their passengers. And we haven't yet been able to break out of that mold where we can provide a ferry service that moves passengers, connects it to locations on Vancouver Island and as well on the Lower Mainland, and also connect with car share co-ops on the other side, just as an example, enhancing the transit on the other side so that there's a place, there's a way to get from where you end up to where you want to be. I think that the Green Party has always talked about shrinking our footprint, making sure that people, their products live and work closer to their goods. And I think that as we build complete communities, as Mr. Roberts has suggested,
Thanks, Adam. Scott.
This is certainly a question that, I'd bring it back not only to yourself, but to the whole community and the whole region. We need to get everybody involved in this type of a question. How do we improve it for everybody? Not just for the BC Ferries, but for all of us. How do we make it better, more economical for everything? So it's like, I talked about the layers in the medical system. It's the same thing with the BC Ferries, the same with all the crown corporations that we have. We need to start peeling them apart, go back within the employment of them, and ask the employees, what can we do? How can we improve it? Because they work there every day. I don't work for BC Ferries, but I see it. So if we can go back to the people and get their suggestions, it'd be amazing what we can get accomplished. Thank you.
Miley, thanks for the question. Yes, I do understand the social costs of driving. That's why I established Salt Spring's first bus system. Stephen referred to the cost of that bus system. Our bus system costs the average household on Salt Spring $1 per month per household. So it's very affordable. I also established the Transportation Commission, which you see building sidewalks and pathways all across Salt Spring right now. So again, when you're considering who to vote for here, you have to think beyond rhetoric. You have to think of the personal commitment and the experience and the proven record. And I think on public transportation, I think I've demonstrated that. Provincially, again, look at the NDP platform where we're going to be reinvesting part of the carbon tax in public transit to address that issue.
Thank you. I wonder if I could ask you over there if you would mind if we took Nancy's question first, just so she doesn't have to stand for so long. Please go ahead, Nancy.
My name's Nancy Wiggin, and I'm concerned about the open net pens for raising Atlantic salmon in the main migratory path of our wild Pacific salmon, and the loss of a vast number of not only our sockeye, but there's 5 different.
Thanks for the question, Nancy.
Okay.
I think we have it. Yeah.
And herring also.
Okay, thank you. Adam.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Nancy. And clearly, as the son of a fisherman who fished in Saanich Inlet growing up as a kid and not having fish there anymore, there's a stark reality that my life and the effect that the loss of our wild salmon has on our life. We try to feed people salmon. We forget that salmon actually feed our environment. We cannot wait till 2020 to monitor this any longer. We actually need to get those salmon farms out of our oceans. We need to retrain the people working on those salmon farms. And we need to get back to working on our wild fish, our wild salmon, our wild Pacific salmon, and stop pretending like we can fix a problem that we have with our environment by just growing fish in pens. It hasn't worked in Europe, it's not working in BC, and we need to start getting real with ourselves on this situation.
Thank you.
We can't wait 7 more cycles.
Nancy, thank you for your question. I have to be honest, last Saturday night when this question was brought up, I didn't even know that we had fish farms around us. So there's my ignorance. But I will tell you though, since then, I have done a lot of investigating on this. And what I have found out is I am extremely now concerned about this. Just so you know, the fish farming industry is a major cash cow for these fish farmers. And since they've been doing this for the last 25 years, they have raped and pillaged, like Adam has said, all our Pacific salmon. And it is a major concern. The first thing we do need to do is get all of these fish farms out of our waters and onto the land. And I guarantee you, you can mark my words, the fish farmers will not want to do that because it is extremely expensive and not profitable. So if that's the case, then we need to eliminate them altogether because they are eliminating our Pacific salmon. And that's something we need to do. I agree with you.
Thank you. Gary.
The NDP supports the recommendations of the Cohen Commission on the so-called missing sockeye, and that's the most recent most comprehensive research on the topic that's been done to date. So the NDP and myself personally support the recommendations of the Commission, which is to begin immediately monitoring the disease transfer from fish farms to wild stocks. The current regulatory regime for fish farms in British Columbia were initiated by the NDP. Yes, we do need to strengthen them. I worked for the Salmon Aquaculture Review in the 90s that established our current regulatory regime. I support moving the industry out of migratory areas and moving the industry to closed containment.
Thank you.
I think most of us up here agree. In fact, I think all four of us agree that the salmon of British Columbia are special and they're integral to the fabric of this community, to this coastal community that we live in. There's no way we should endanger them. The Atlantic salmon farms are in open net beds in the ocean where they run the risk of intermingling with our own salmon fish stocks. If we took them on land, much as they do in aquaculture in other parts of the world, and did it on land, there would be no risk of them infiltrating and getting into our natural ecosystem. That's what we need to do, and I recommend we do it as quickly as possible because I don't want to risk that salmon. That's something that I've grown up with, you've grown up with, and it's vitally important to all of us. If there's any risk whatsoever that those Atlantic salmon farms are harming their salmon stocks and getting up our streams, then we have to take them out of the water immediately and get them on land where they won't cause that kind of damage.
Thank you. I'm just going to check in with the candidates. I'm looking at the lines and the time left. Are you guys okay if we go to 45 seconds per answer?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jack Brack, Gulf Island Teachers Association President. BC has the worst student-educator ratio in Canada. BC spends $1,000 less per student than the Canadian average. This means larger classes and less classroom support for students. If elected, how will your party begin to bring the funding support for BC schools up to the Canadian average?
Thank you. Scott.
Jack, thank you for your question. It's going to be tough. That's going to be very, very tough. And you know, I guess what I'd do is I'd go back to the teachers and the administrators and everybody in this school. I've talked to some people already regarding this issue. And one of the things I think what I would do is I think I would have lower class sizes for the classrooms between K and 8, and probably maybe even a little larger class sizes from 9 to 12. And I think at that point, you're probably starting to separate the students when they're getting to 9 to 12 to see what direction they want to go when they go into post-education. So there's a lot you have to do. You know, this is a huge subject, but it's something that I would be definitely looking into for you.
Thank you, Scott. Gary.
Yeah, in the past 12 years under the Liberal regime, the standards regarding class size and composition have been reneged on. In fact, those provisions in the teacher's contract were stripped by the Liberals illegally from the teacher's contract. So again, it comes back to I'm sure we're all rhetorically in support of improving classroom supports, but it's got to come back to funding. And again, look at our platform, increasing the number of teachers, teaching assistants, counselors, librarians. It's one of the biggest portions of our platform, and it's fully costed. And the way we have to do that, again, is to create a fairer tax system. So it's one of the most important commitments that we're making in our platform, one of the most important reasons we need to change the provincial government.
Thank you. Stephen.
Thank you for the question. Over the last decade, enrollment in our schools has declined by 66,000, yet K-12 annual spending in education is up by 36% to $5.3 billion in British Columbia. It's the highest level it's ever been and one of the biggest items in our provincial budget. We've been building and investing in new schools, $2.4 billion, in fact, in the last decade to build 96 and replace 96 schools around the province. There's more work to be done here, but we need a prosperous economy if we're going to continue to do it. We've got earthquake upgrades that we need to do in our schools. Many of them are old and aging. We've spent $2.2 billion on that as well. You need a prosperous government that's able to generate tax revenues if we're going to be able to continue to invest in this. We have been doing that, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you. Okay, next question over here.
So,
sorry. Oh, no, one more person. Adam, sorry.
So as I said, education is a top priority, and actually, you know, to be frank, a lot of the initiatives that the NDP have put forward in investing in teachers is the right thing to do. And one of the beautiful things about being a Green MLA is I can stand up with them. I don't have to stand in opposition just because I'm on that side of the House. So in fact, I would stand in support of our teachers. I would stand in support of providing smaller class sizes for our students. They are our future generations. And the beautiful thing about being green is that we can stand for the best ideas. And in this case, I would stand for those ideas that were put forward by my NDP colleague. Thank you.
Adam, my apologies for interrupting you. Please.
Hi, my name is Tom Mitchell. For me, the biggest threat facing us at the moment is the impending climate collapse. I believe unless we change course, we're going to get into a feedback loop. So I wish I was addressing a panel that was actually all united with some kind of a pro-rep or shared power system in place. But as it is, within your parties, if you are elected, how do you see us changing course away from this calamity? Thank you.
Gary, I think you're up.
Tom, thanks for that. What the NDP proposes to do is certainly adhere to our existing climate action targets. We're going to be expanding the application of the carbon tax to oil and gas venting emissions. We're going to be reinvesting part of the carbon tax in public transit, as I indicated before, and also in energy conservation retrofits. And all of those things will reduce our carbon footprint. On a couple of other fronts, food production. We plan some very specific measures to increase local food production, which will reduce the greenhouse content of imported food. That's an indirect, but still will contribute to climate action. And finally, we'll be investing substantial dollars in tree replanting in British Columbia,
Thanks,
which
Gary.
will contribute to the long-term greenhouse gas reduction.
Thank you. Stephen?
Thank you. If we're going to combat climate change, we're going to need cleaner and more renewable sources of energy. The government of British Columbia in the past 10 years has invested heavily in that. We have 3 wind projects that are operational in this province, in Bear Mountain, in Doki, and up in the north near Tumbler Ridge. We're also ready to bring online the new Cape Scott wind power facility, which is going to generate 99 megawatts of electricity over there. This province is leading the way in Canada. In terms of biomass electricity production, more than half of that production in Canada takes place here in British Columbia. The government over the last decade has been investing in these areas so that we can clean up our environment, so that we can move forward and produce cleaner, more renewable energy. We need to keep doing it, obviously, because there's a serious issue at hand. We've spent the money. We're going to continue to spend the money. We're going to continue to invest because that is the way forward.
Thank you.
Shorten the time, you get people speaking much faster. Unfortunately, clean energy projects over the last 10 years have not got the approvals that they've needed to get. That's just been the case. Projects are leaving this province. We can replant trees all we want, but if we're still mowing them down at a rate unlike is ever seen, we're not protecting old growth forests, what's the point in replanting them? It's those big trees that help protect us. We increase the carbon tax. Not just keep it the way it is right now, but increase it and actually invest the money rather than throwing it into a big pot that we'll reach into every time we need something. Invest it in those clean energy projects so that we can use that money to actually provide options for folks to make different and better decisions.
Thank you.
I looked into the carbon tax issue, and I talked to some scientists, and I talked to some people that I thought knew a lot about it. And it's amazing how little I think we all really truly know about this carbon tax that's been put upon us. It is something that I think it's a good thing that we have it in place, but I don't think the government of today, and even when Gordon Campbell brought it in, he never really had an end zone for it. He produced this platform, and then he just kind of left it there, and he put a tax on it that we all pay into it. But I'll bet dollars to donuts, if I went across this entire audience, not one person could explain to me what it does and what it's all about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Anderson, Gulf Islanders for Safe Technology. Here on the island, we have about a 20% holdback or holdout, refusing these horrible smart meters the Liberals have forced on us. My question is, if elected, would you support the seeking of an amendment for Section 17 of the Clean Energy Act, which mandates the imposition undemocratically of these very flawed meters which start fires and cost much more money, don't save any energy, and irradiate everybody for miles around? Each meter goes about, what is it now?
Thank you.
3 kilometers.
Thank you. Stephen?
So the question was whether we'd allow people the ability to refuse having a smart meter?
Opt out, yeah.
That is the situation currently. You can actually refuse to have a smart meter, and I know a number of people on this island have done so. That is the policy. There's no enforcement of that. You don't have to take one if you don't want one, but we'd like you to take one, or BC Hydro would like you to have one. There's no health risk from those smart meters. Studies have been done. They're communicating with the base station for just 1 minute a day on average. They are less likely to affect your health than a 30-minute cell phone call. So smart meters are not going to be dangerous to your health. You do have an option to refuse one if you think they might be, and I will stick with that proposal. If you want to refuse it, go ahead.
Yeah, that's wrong information.
Thank you.
I think the question was about actually supporting an amendment to the legislation, and I would say yes. I was one of the councillors at the UBCM that went to bat on this issue right from the very beginning, because as in Central Saanich, we immediately started getting letters from folks who said that the government's approach was heavy-handed, and it was. And so we went to Vancouver with a couple of colleagues of mine, and we said folks should not have to be forced to strap anything on the side of their house, and they should be given options. And unfortunately, we were told quite smugly, in fact, by BC Hydro and by folks in the Liberal government, too bad, decisions made. We said that doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for us because we're on the ground and we're facing these folks, and they should have options. And so I would agree that the legislation should be amended.
Thank you.
This here's where another $1 billion waste went down the drain for us all. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. It was $1 billion, people. I don't have a problem with them wanting to implement this new meter. However, it should only been done on brand new houses being built. Obviously, you go from old technology to new technology. If something happened to the meter that was on the side of your home and it needed to be replaced, well, we don't have that old technology anymore. We have new technology. That's called advancement. That's just what happens in this world. So, but as for what you're saying there, sir, you're absolutely right. We didn't need to do this. This was $1 billion that we put into somebody's jeans out there that probably didn't need it.
Okay, thank you. The clock stopped, Maddie. I think maybe you hit the switch that's off. I don't know. No, that's the buzzer. The other one. No.
If we'd invested it in energy conservation instead of these smart meters. So we'll be directing BC Utilities Commission. You know, there are cost and technical issues here, and that's why the matter should have been referred to the Utilities Commission right off the bat, and that's what we'll be doing to get their advice on how best to provide those options.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's nice to know that salmon are now right up there with mother and apple pie, but I'd like to get more specific about this. I've watched this resource get trashed my entire life. Government's failed. Are you aware that there is now a Department of Wild Salmon led by Alexandra Morton and a host of volunteers and citizen financing that's conducting the most up-to-date research? Do you support that research? Have you looked at it? Do you know that 95% pre-spawn mortality is now occurring in some rivers?
Thank you.
Salmon are dying.
Okay.
Have you seen the film Salmon Confidential?
Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Adam.
Look, you know, I was pretty crystal clear on this issue. I remain crystal clear on this issue. Certainly, we've got some issues with development. in and around those spawning beds. You know, not all the blame can be put on fish farms, but a lot of it has to be. And it's actually a point to the perspective that we're taking on this world. We can trash our wild salmon and then, oh, well, we'll just build some pens and grow some more so we can eat it. Completely neglecting the fact that they are a critical component to the life cycle of hundreds, if not thousands, of other species. It's not acceptable. And monitoring till 2020, not acceptable. We need to take action now. Just sitting back and watching them 7 cycles more is not acceptable.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, but I don't know the gentleman you did refer to. I have no idea who that gentleman is. Or the woman, I'm sorry, I don't know who she is. I guess all I could say to you at this point was I would do more investigating into it for you. I'll look at, but I really truly don't have a solid answer for you other than you are right. Our salmons need to be protected. And the Atlantic salmon shouldn't be here on the West Coast. They need to go back to Atlantic Canada, not Pacific Canada.
John, thanks for the question. I did see the film. I do support Alexander's work. I think it's very important. And, you know, not just for all of us, but really for the industry itself. If there's an issue there around disease transfer, this industry has seen the end. So it's very important that that work get done. Look, the latest work that's been done on this, the latest science that's been done on this, is by the Cohen Commission. And like I said before, the NDP supports the recommendation of the Cohen Commission to get those farms out of migratory routes, but the Cohen Commission recommended doing further research. It's fine to say no, but it's got to be evidence-based. And the latest research done by the Cohen Commission suggests that we need to do more research on the issue. I worked on the salmon aquaculture review. I worked for the Nishka on the fisheries component of the treaty. I think I know a little bit about fisheries. If you're going to make regulations, if you're going to get rid of an industry, it has to be evidence-based.
Stephen.
Yeah, thank you again for the question. I think I was clear earlier when I said that if we have salmon farms in the migratory routes and they are at risk of damaging our local salmon stocks, then we need to move them out of the water immediately. That's still my view. The Cohen Commission, as Gary says, is the latest we have on this, and it does recommend more research. However, I have a hunch that there's probably something to do with the salmon farms, and we probably should get them out of the water right away, especially if they're in migratory routes. But we need to continue to do the research. Doesn't mean we don't act on some of the recommendations now, but we do need to continue to research. It's a complex problem. It's not just about salmon on migratory routes. It's about warming in our oceans. It's about a number of other factors. It's about development in our rivers. There are many factors that come into this, and we do need to research them. But as I've said before, let's get those fish farms out of the oceans and somewhere safer on land.
Thanks a lot. Okay, next question, please.
My name is Bob Wild. My question is, what is your party's policy on fracking as a means of accessing natural gas and oil?
Okay, start with Scott.
I have to be honest that I don't know a whole lot about the fracking process. However, I have been listening to some of my colleagues up north, and they're not in favor of it at the moment. They're also saying, that it's going to be many, many, many years before this actually comes in. This isn't just going to go away. I realize that. However, it's going to be about 10 years before it even gets implemented. So I think over the next 10 years, we're going to certainly see a lot more studies and things be done on it. But at the moment, I'm not in favor of it. I need to know a whole bunch more before I give my John Henry on that piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
The NDP have very serious concerns about fracking. We're going to establish an independent scientific assessment of the practice and be guided by their recommendations with regard to regulation of the practice, taxing of the practice, or banning it, depending on the outcome of that research. Look, there again, the geology of northeast British Columbia, where most of the fracking is going on, is somewhat different than other areas of the world. And again, I guess it comes back to needing that research, needing that evidence to make appropriate regulation and ban it if need be, if the research suggests that there is a serious risk to water supplies, for example.
Thanks. Stephen.
As Gary says, the northeast of British Columbia, where most of this takes place, is a different geological makeup than where we are down here and in other parts of the world. There is no threat thus far that we can ascertain to groundwater supplies in the northeast of the province. We have been fracking in British Columbia for 50 or 60 years, and everybody should know that, without incident. We should continue to study, we should continue to monitor, we should continue to look at it, but the people of our northern communities are close at hand. They've been working in this area for decades, and at the moment, it seems to be a safe way to get the gas out of the ground in that part of the world. So absolutely continue to monitor, continue to look at it and test, but for the moment, it seems to be a process that we have been able to do successfully in British Columbia.
Thank you. Adam.
The Greens, like a lot of British Columbians, do not support fracking. I think that if you want to take it a step further, let's talk about the dream plan that has been put forward to save us from ourselves, I guess, and from the money that we've been deferring into the future and the bills that we haven't been paying. Site C Dam is going to cost us billions of dollars from your money to basically hand as a subsidy to the LNG companies because they need that power to get the energy out of the ground. And then we're not even sure that we're going to have a market to sell it to at the price that they've committed to. So I think that what we're looking at here in this discussion, certainly there are concerns about water, there's huge environmental concerns, but ultimately the plan doesn't look like it's going to work. It's a dream.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, my name is Chris Dixon. I have to say that I cannot think about the oil and gas industry without thinking about a dead coastline. I just can't separate those two thoughts. And I don't think another big business deal is going to save British Columbia from anything. So what I would ask all of you, either individually or within your party, how you can push back against this relentless pressure to make more money at any cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, you're up.
Specifically with respect to oil and gas, Chris, and the pipelines. So there is a broader question there too, which I'm not sure I'm going to address properly. But I've stated the NDP position on the pipelines up to now. And again, I think this is a reason why you need to change the provincial government, because in terms of Northern Gateway, Christy Clark's position is the 5 conditions, right, which essentially means given enough money, they will put the coast at risk. We are unequivocally opposed to that. Adrian Dix has come out strongly against Kinder Morgan, but again, due process is necessary. And in fact, if it comes to a legal battle, if all you do is say no, you leave yourself open to liability.
Okay, Stephen.
Thank you, Chris. Undertaking development just for development's sake and for the earning of money at the cost of our environment is not something that any of us here at this table would advocate. The response from the provincial government on the Northern Gateway pipeline has been very lukewarm, as you can tell. There were 5 conditions. Only one of those was to suggest that we should get a better return on the risk of transporting this across our northern lands. The other criteria all involved us being able to do this safely. Making sure we meet the environmental standards of review, making sure we have the latest and best technology on land and at sea, making sure our First Nations peoples up in the north are also on side as well. If those things don't come together, and it looks increasingly likely that they won't, then this pipeline won't go ahead.
Thank you.
Our environment's not negotiable.
Adam.
As I mentioned, we've seen for the last 2 years the example of a conscience in our House of Commons. It's now time to put that same conscience into our legislature, one that can be done in public, not behind closed doors in the caucus with sealed minutes, but in front, so that if principles change, because in principle, we weren't going to make a decision, or the NDP were not going to make a comment about Kinder Morgan until the green pressure came, and then that principle changed. We need to be in that legislature, folks, so that we understand and we can ensure that those principles do not change again. Because I can stand up for those interests, Chris, in public. and my vote can reflect it in the legislature.
Thank you.
Chris, these other gentlemen are correct. None one of us will ever put the environment ahead of cash. There's no possible way. So what we'd have to do is we'd look at this and we'd come back to you, and I would ask you guys and everybody in here, if you want me to move forward and allow Kinder Morgan and everything to proceed, then I would do that because it's your voice. But if you also say to me, no, Scott, I don't want this to be, I don't want to go, the majority tells us that we don't want to go forward, then I would not go forward with it. Your voice is important. It's not just me, it's all of us put together.
Thank you.
Nora Laird. The last two community assessments, needs assessments done by the Salt Spring Foundation have indicated that affordable housing is Salt Spring's #1 issue. I'd like to hear from the candidates, who, by the way, thank you for being here today. I'd like to hear your background in that area, accomplishments, what you would do if elected.
All in 45 seconds. Go for it, Stephen.
Thank you for your question. Indeed, affordable housing is a challenge on Salt Spring. We've got a diverse economy here, but housing is expensive and we are restricted with land use issues, so it makes it difficult for us to build much new housing. We've got development challenges as well. One of the options we could look at is, for example, allowing secondary homes on people with sufficient number of acres. We do that already, but maybe we reduce that requirement and allow it on less acreage. I have not been involved in housing development previously, but obviously community consultation on these points and what we can come to agree as a community would be acceptable is something that we'd have to look at. So I'd be happy to discuss further once elected and help islanders come up to a solution that meets most needs here.
Thank you. Adam.
This is a question that needs more than 45 seconds to answer, Nora, but I will say that as a First Nations housing consultant, I have dealt with housing and the former chair of planning and development in the District of Central Saanich and the former member of the Regional Housing Trust Fund. This has been something that has been a major part of my life for the last 4.5 years. The one thing that I've learned is that we can continue to build people houses and call them affordable. It actually creates unaffordable housing elsewhere. We need to actually be talking about housing affordability, which is just a slightly different way to look at this question, because we're talking about providing housing through the entire demographic, through the entire, so right from the hard to house all the way up to providing houses for the wealthy.
Thank you.
This issue is definitely not just here on Salt Spring Island. This issue is everywhere in our entire riding. Something that I found very interesting is that it's unbelievable the number of vacant facilities the provincial government owns. And my thoughts are, like, if I just go around, and I apologize, I haven't gone around this particular area, so maybe you guys would be able to help me with this, but when I drive around North Saanich, there's about 4 elementary schools that have gone vacant, and they've shut them all down, and they've just gone out and they built a brand new school. And that's great, but what are they going to do with the old buildings? And this is a great idea where you could say, you know what, let's take some of these old buildings, let's retrofit them to put some housing, put people into them. There's nothing wrong with the buildings.
Thank
They're
you.
just vacant.
Gary.
Thanks, Nora. Thanks, Nora. My background, CRD Director for Salt Spring, opted Salt Spring into the CRD Housing Trust Fund. We've contributed to that trust fund about $250,000 and received back $750,000 for affordable housing projects on this island, including Murakami Gardens. Former president of the Salt Spring Abbeyfield Society. We just established, in partnership with Island Women Against Violence, the 26th Abbeyfield in Canada. And in terms of the NDP platform, we're committed and have fully costed the commitment to 1,500 housing units per year, fully costed.
Thank you. Okay. I think now is the time to cut the candidates' answers to 30 seconds, given the length. So it really focuses the mind wonderfully. So please do your part and keep your questions to 30 seconds. Please go ahead.
My name is Jenny Redpath, and last summer a private member's bill proposing to study the legal definition of the beginning of life was debated in the House of Commons in Ottawa. Such a motion, if passed, would have reopened the abortion debate in Canada. Although this was a federal debate, I'd like to know where you guys stand.
Thank you. Adam, you're up.
That's life. And it starts right away. And where I come from, that's our blood. And we don't mess with that. And I won't mess with it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, once again, I'd have to call the fifth on this one. I'd have to go back to all the people in the area and ask for their opinion on it. And then I would bring the consensus to the House and say, this is what my constituents have said, this is what their belief is, and this is how I'm going to respond for you.
Thanks. Gary?
My personal view is I do support the woman's right to choose. It's a very personal issue. But I think abortion should be absolutely the last resort, and every effort should be made, every resource should be made available for the woman to keep the child if she so desires. This has touched my life personally, but women have the right to make that choice.
I would agree with Gary. It's a woman's right to choose. Obviously, abortion is not something we like to see. It's a terrible process, and it should be a last resort. I'm not in favor of reopening the debate in the House of Commons or anywhere else in this country.
Adam wants to use the 10 seconds you didn't
No,
use.
sorry. The question was how I would do it, and I would just say that we do have a right to choose, but for me, it starts immediately, and that's my blood. So I'm sorry, I didn't completely answer that question. I took only 10 seconds.
Thank you.
But there is a right to choose.
All right, I think we're over here.
Phyllis Wakelin, about Lady Minto Hospital again. The first Lady Minto Hospital was begun at the behest of Dr. Lionel Beach and a group known as the Guild of Sunshine. That was in 1913. It was put on donated land. Building supplies were donated. Labor was donated. And
Please get to the
grants
question.
from the provincial government. The same prevailed with the new hospital that we have today. After all the support and energy supplied by the members of the community in the past, today we no longer play any part in the managing and decision-making for our hospital. What are you and your government prepared to do to return some responsibility for the hospital to the community that it created so many years ago?
Thank you.
I would like to, you guys should look after your own hospital with the support of the provincial government, not us look after it for you. You should be looking after it for us. So I would bring it back and say, get some board of directors in there or volunteers or whoever, the community wide, and then bring it back to me and I'll go and fight for you. That's crazy. I'm sorry I said that, but wow, I didn't know that has happened.
Okay, Gary.
Thanks, Phyllis. Well, as CRD director, I helped secure funding from the CRD taxpayers to renovate Lady Minto and upgrade the operating room, which after the election in 2009, despite promises to the contrary, has been shut down. I would, and again, coming back to the restoration of health funding in our platform, special focus on rural areas. In terms of VHA, there definitely has to be a voice for the community at VHA, at the regional health authorities.
Thank you. Stephen.
Obviously, Lady Minto is a fundamental facility for this community, and I'm completely supportive of it. We have a hospital advisory board, the Lady Minto Foundation, and they should continue to work with the health authority and with VHA to make sure that the hospital operates in the interest of the community, and that is the way it should operate. It has been operating that way as far as I know, and should continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. This microphone, please. Sorry, Adam. I keep doing it to you. I'm sorry.
Well, if I keep answering questions like I answered the abortion question, maybe I should just probably not be given an opportunity to answer questions. I think that what I would say is that in the Green Party position is that we believe in bringing health back into the community. We believe in integrated multidisciplinary health centers, so that we've got multiple different specialists and doctors and nurse practitioners working at the same place. The Lady Minto Hospital, the Saanich Peninsula Hospital, and the wonderful people in the communities that support those facilities should be encouraged, they should be supported, and it shouldn't be this top-down approach.
Okay, thank you. Stephen. Oh, sorry, the question. Yeah, I beg your pardon. Sorry, I'm distracted. Please go ahead.
My name is Wayne Hewitt, and my question is regarding the Drinking Water Protection Act and the fact that nutrient loading is causing cyanobacteria toxin blooms in our lakes. And I wondered what you would do if you were elected, since the Ministry of Health is the one that looks after the Drinking Water Protection Act, but they failed to recognize nutrient loading as a water quality concern, and they only recognize bacteriology.
Thank you. Gary.
Thanks, Wayne. As CRD Director, I helped develop the management plans for both Cushion and St. Mary's Lake. Worked with you, Wayne, quite a bit on that issue. Absolutely, nutrient loading should be recognized as a risk to drinking water lakes. In terms of St. Mary's in particular, I do think we need to revisit the science there, but in the short term, the focus needs to be on, and an MLA needs to secure funding to upgrade the water treatment systems on our lakes so that at least we know we're getting safe drinking water.
Thanks,
to
Gary.
give us time to search for solutions.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. I would have to say I agree with Gary on that one. As someone who gets my water from St. Mary's Lake, nutrient loading is a factor, as is the bacteriology. Both are of a concern. And an MLA from this riding needs to go to Victoria and make sure we secure funding to help us fix the problems in St. Mary's Lake and make sure that we don't have any ill effects or any deaths or anything along those lines from the water there. We need to guarantee our water quality, absolutely.
Thank you. Adam.
Agreed, and further to that, I think they should also amend the OMAR regulations, which is the organic matter regulations that allow for the spreading of processed sludge called biosolids, which is affecting our water table as well. And I think that that is also part of the nutrient loading that you might be talking about.
Thanks a lot.
I totally agree, and once again, I would bring it back to the people here, because the people here know all about it. So let's work together on the issue. All of us, let's work. If this is a major issue, and by the sounds of it, it is, and drinking water is a major issue everywhere, we need to bring it up front, and let's do that. I agree.
Thank you. Question over there, please.
My name is Judy Stevenson.
A bit closer, please.
Pardon me?
Closer to the mic. Right in there.
My name is Judy Stevenson, and I would like to know from each of the candidates, what are the three things that you are most proud of in your professional, political, or working lives that you have done to support and protect our environment, either within the constituency or in the province as a whole?
Thank you. And Stephen, you're first.
Thank you for the question, Judy. I think environmental stewardship falls to all of us. We each have to take our part. I recently renovated and retrofitted my home. I made sure that I used locally sourced products for that, local timber, local craftspeople. I employed island contractors as much as possible so that I wasn't increasing the carbon footprint by taking people from across the waters. I put in heat systems, a heat pump, so that I could have the least impact of all possible on the environment that way.
Thank you.
Took a whole host of measures along those lines.
Yeah, thank you. As a Central Saanich councillor, I spearheaded along with, and started the discussion really at the AVICC and worked very closely with your Islands Trust Chair, Sheila Malcolmson, on the derelict and abandoned boats vessels program. Clearly, the Liberal government had, quote, lost momentum on this file, but it has moved a long way. And I think that a lot of the work that we've got ahead of us needs to get that momentum back. And
Thank
so
you.
I will commit to working with that for the islands.
Thank you. Scott.
Every day I personally go out and pick up garbage that I see that's been thrown out on the roads and everywhere else. I walk about 5 miles every day with my dog, and we always picking up things. And I find it amazing that people have no desire or to pick up the debris that we seem to be throwing out. So that's what I do personally.
Thanks a lot. Question, please.
Thank you.
Gary.
Sorry. Who? Oh, Gary. Gary. Well, at least I'm
Thanks, Judy, for the question. The three things for me would be the Taxation land issue, where with Bryony Penn, I laid the groundwork to establish a South and West Salt Spring Conservation Partnership. It was those agencies that protected all of Burgoyne Bay and the largest Garry Oak Meadow in British Columbia. I established the bus here. Salt Spring has the highest ridership of any community of its size in British Columbia. Ridership has quintupled over the last 5 years. We won a national award.
Thank you. So now we go to you.
Thank you. My name is Marcel Roy. I'd like to know, if elected, would you bring back the independent oversight of the BC Utilities Commission over projects like Site C Dam?
Thank you. Adam, you're first.
Yes, I would.
Scott?
What I would do is I'd confront all of you, and if that's something that our whole constituent would want, then I definitely would.
Gary?
No, that's one of the most important issues in British Columbia right now. Another reason to change government. As an economist, I am particularly affronted by the fact that billions of dollars of independent power projects, the so-called smart meters, the $8 billion Site C Dam, all precluded from review by the Utilities Commission. Ratepayers in British Columbia, over the life of those independent private power contracts, are going to be overpaying billions of dollars because of lack of oversight from the Utilities Commission. We're committed as a government to restoring that.
Stephen.
Thanks for your question. My personal perspective is that we should not be afraid ever of independent oversight of our actions. Whether it's an Auditor General, whether it's the Utilities Commission, we should actually have that. And so I'm absolutely in favor.
Thank you. Question over here.
Judith Boel. We all know that a lot of work in government goes on in committee, all right? Given your particular skill sets and experience, if you could choose what committees you were going to work on, what committee will you just love to work on? That's a 5-second answer.
Thank you. Scott.
Finance.
All right. Gary.
Environment.
I'm interested in the Agricultural Committee because we need to build our agribusiness in British Columbia and produce more food in this province.
Thank you.
I'm actually gonna answer this.
You're gonna answer this too? All right.
What I'll say is that neither the Liberals haven't used. They've shut down the committee structure, so we haven't heard anything about it from the opposition. They haven't minded that we haven't been in committee actually having discussions and getting information from people. The committee that I would like to be a part of, and the one that I'm most qualified for, would be the one from Aboriginal Affairs, because it hasn't met and done anything significant in the last 10 years, if you can believe it. Billions of dollars later on treaty negotiations, 10 years since the last standing order came from Aboriginal Affairs.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patrick Owen. I'm in the 10th grade here at GISS. Once I graduate, I plan to start a small business. My question is this. If elected, what will your party do to help start up small businesses, get off the ground, and support established small businesses?
Thank you. Gary.
I think the NDP platform looks more at the underlying factors that determine businesses getting started. So the freezing of BC Ferry's fares and the revitalization of that service for Salt Spring and the Outer Gulf Islands really important to setting that context. Agriculture will be doing some things to support local food production, including requiring local hospitals to purchase local, at least a part of their food from local services. Will be reinvigorating Destination BC to promote tourism.
Stephen.
Thanks for your question, Patrick. Small business is the main engine of economic growth in British Columbia. That's where most of our jobs come from. It behooves all of us to be very supportive of it. Simpler taxation policy is important, easier for you to execute and get involved. Support through advisory parts of different ministries, depending on which field you're in, to help you with setting up your business, to help you with the latest technology in those businesses. These things are all part of supporting our local businessmen, helping them identify solutions and helping them identify markets for their goods, something else that we can do. So we'd be right there with you as a BC Liberal government.
Thank you. Adam.
I agree with Stephen that most of the people actually in this province work in small business. In fact, the exception is big business. So everybody else works in small business. The small business is not exceptional. What I would say is that I'd work with local governments. It's not going to be the provincial government that does it, it's local governments. And this is what my colleagues from the Liberals and definitely the NDP don't get. And that is when I approached them and said, how are you going to invest in communities that are now charging commercial and industrial tax rates at seven times what a resident pays? That's what's helping shut businesses down.
Thank you.
Patrick, I'm already proud of you that you already have a goal in grade 10. I think that's wonderful, and small business is definitely the way to go. What I would do is I would go back to the teachers and have the teachers start plan you forward, so that way then when you get to grade 12 and you get past grade 12, you're already set, ready to go. You don't have to worry about everything else, and you certainly don't have to worry about the government. You're already ready. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. In spite of the doublespeak I just heard, a lot of people were not given a choice to keep their analog meter, and in spite of what was said here very nicely by you, Adam, the policy statement with the Green Party states that they support the wired smart meter, whereas a lot of people want back their analog meter that was taken in spite of the fact they had a sign up saying they did not want it taken, and in spite of the fact they've already refused the courts.
Would you ask the question, please?
There's a family right now with their power turned off by BC Hydro because they're trying to get back an analog meter. Would you guys know about that? And what is your opinion of people not just getting back wired meters, but their actual analog meter? Yes or no?
Thank you. Stephen, you're first.
I don't know about the family you're talking about, but if you give me their name, we'll get somebody from the ministry or from BC Hydro to get their power back on, because the policy is that you can refuse one.
Thank you. Adam.
In terms of having an analog meter come back, I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I think that there is, that the biggest issue with these is not the digital reader part of them. It is and I guess, sorry, that's not entirely true because there are some security issues. The Wi-Fi is one part of it and the security issues are another. So, like I said before, I think people should have a full range of options, and analog could possibly be one of them. And so, yes, I mean, I think that we should have a full range of options.
Thank you.
Scott.
Ma'am, I agree with Stephen. I don't know who these family are. If that hydro is off and there is an analog meter on that building, I will go through walls to get that back on. That is unacceptable in the province of British Columbia.
Thank you. Gary.
I'm not aware of the particular family, but no family, no household should be suffering while, as I said, the NDP will be directing the Utilities Commission to provide options on opt-out provisions. In the meantime, that's the role of an MLA, to advocate for families in circumstances like that, and no one should be going through any kind of hardship while we're investigating the possibility of opt-out options.
Thank you. Okay, would you like to ask a question?
Hi, my name is Laura Shack, and I would like to know what each of the candidates would do about the HST, and if they are going to abolish the PST, then what tax would replace it?
Thank you, Marsha. Adam.
Hello, thank you for the question. The HST has cost our province an awful lot of pain. We were, first of all, it said that we weren't going to go to the HST, then it was dropped on us and we went to the HST. Now it was made intensely political and we had to get rid of the HST. Now we're back to the PST. I don't see us going back to the HST. Now, what I can say is that as a small business owner that started a business in that, the HST was a lot simpler for us. And value-added taxes are good taxes.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, it was political, and that's a problem.
The sad part about this thing, the sad part about the HST was how it was implemented. It had nothing to do with anything else. And should we have kept it? Absolutely. However, we've reversed back, and when the sad part about it is it's cost us billions. And what they're not talking about is how much did it cost us to re-rent the building, buy all the equipment, restaff all the staff, everything else that has gone on. It's really sad. And that's what happens when these big governments, and they don't listen to the people.
Thank you. Gary.
Marcia, thanks for the question. We are going back to the PST system, and I think your question points to the need for political parties, for candidates to be very clear about what they're going to do before the election and not say one thing and do another after the election. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Marcia, again for your question. I absolutely agree. The HST was terrible implementation. It's the right tax, but it was done badly. We've had one premier resign over it, and we've had a referendum on it, and the people spoke, and they asked us to bring it back. The whole process was flawed. One of the reasons I got involved in politics was I hate to see good policy be ruined by bad implementation from people who aren't thinking about it. The HST is a tax that would benefit the province. It would benefit businessmen and business people here as well as individuals, and we should probably go back to it, but that doesn't look like that's on the cards in the future.
Thank you.
You're right to bring it up. Thanks.
Thank you. Question over here.
My name is Colin Leslie.
Can you step up a bit?
My name is Colin Leslie. I am a grade 10 student at GIS. And around the world, there have been many ambitious scientific projects for clean energy and affordable energy. Their entire cities run through solar power. And I'm wondering here today what your ambitions regarding this are.
Thank you, Tom. Scott.
I haven't put a lot of thought into that. And I guess, because it's not part of my expertise, what I would do is I'd go back to the people, and if it's something that if you yourself wanted to look into, I would give you all the information that I could help you with to get all the information to make things better for all of us.
Thanks. Gary?
Thanks for the question. We do need to be encouraging renewable energy. As an economist, I've done work in this area. The thing to remember is that while it's not quite as sexy as renewable energy, conservation measures are usually the best investment that you can make, and that's why it's such a tragedy, the billion-dollar smart meter program. If we had invested that in energy conservation, the returns on that per unit of energy are usually higher. And the BC Utilities Commission review is important because we want to make sure if we're bringing on new technologies,
Thanks, Gary.
they're cost competitive.
Stephen.
Thank you, Colin. As you know, here in British Columbia, solar energy is not always an option for us, particularly through the long winter months. However, 93% of the energy in British Columbia is generated through clean or renewable resources. We have been investing in wind power. We have been investing in hydroelectric power. We have been investing in solar and geothermal. We can do more of that. 93% is pretty good. We want to keep going in that direction, probably make it 100% if we can. But great question. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam.
Yes, conservation is very important. We often forget that the order, the hierarchy that reduce, reuse, recycle is in, and we just jump straight to the recycle. But reduction is absolutely the first thing. I think we need to seriously look at geothermal in this province. I don't think that we've invested enough in in looking at geothermal. We're right on we've got fault lines all over this province, and that is something that I think that we could power. I think that expanding the carbon tax and investing that money into that research and development is the way that we're going to do it.
Thank you. Norbert.
Norbert Schlenker. My question is about the governance study that's going on Salt Spring right now. Gary Holman in particular has been vociferously against self-government on Salt Spring for 10 years, even going so far as to call ISG Islanders for selfish government in the paper and in conversations. I think that's unacceptable to insult large portions of the community that way.
10 seconds to ask a question.
And I'd like to know, if elected, all of you, if elected, will you support the results of the governance study and any follow-up with the new government?
Thank you. Gary.
Thanks, Norbert, I think. As when I ran last as CRD director, I did support an option study for governance, and I will as an MLA. The role of an MLA is to ensure that the community gets objective, comprehensive information. I will not be taking a position on it. The reason I objected at times to ISG's intervention in the issue is that I believe the information they were providing was distorted and aimed at achieving incorporation and didn't necessarily have the best interests of the community at heart.
Thank you. Stephen.
I think each of the gentlemen at the table here has the best interests of the community at heart, as do most of the people who will be involved in the study. We have a study underway now. Once we get the results of that, we should look seriously at acting on the implementation of it. This community has relied on two islands trustees to do the work of a municipality for many people. We're the largest unincorporated community in British Columbia with 10,000 citizens. Is it reasonable to expect two trustees to do all the work of a municipality? We have to look at what's best for this community, and we have to look at it independently and fairly.
Thank
and
you.
It looks like incorporation might be that way.
Okay, Adam.
The only vested interest that I have in this discussion is that your community is serving you the way it needs to, in the most efficient way that it possibly can, for the least amount of money that you can spend on it. I do not have a position on this other than to hear what... I'm going to take Scott's line. I'm going to listen to the people on this one. And I am going to work really hard on your behalf to make sure that this is the best kind of government that you can get. I'm very familiar with local government.
Thank you.
I'm like Adam. I don't know a whole lot about this particular situation. I keep going back to that, don't I? But I did a little bit of reading on it, and I think there's a lot of questions still need to be answered before anybody makes any judgment whatsoever, one way or the other. So I take my hats off to all you people. I know you're working on it, and I continue. And please do continue. And if you need more funding, if I'm elected, then I would make sure that more funding would come so that we can get the right and proper answer for you.
Thank you. Over here, please.
My name is Ruth Tarasoff, and I'm asking a question on behalf of Lynn Thorvaldson, who can't be here. And I quote, "I am an early childhood educator who is concerned that 1 in 6 children in BC live in poverty. The Childcare Advocates of BC propose a $10 a day childcare plan for BC. What do the individual parties here, represented here, plan to address this need for quality, affordable childcare spaces for the young children of working parents here?"
Thank you very much. Stephen.
You've hit upon a crucial issue for parents, obviously. This government was the one that brought in all-day kindergarten, which has been some aid to working parents. We've got more work to do on reducing child poverty. If we look to across the country to Newfoundland, we've seen great success there in reducing it. British Columbia has done so, but we've got more work to do. We've got a number of trials in municipalities underway currently, but there's still more to be done, and it's something that has to be a matter of urgency for us, so absolutely we'll be looking to reducing that.
Thank you. Adam.
50% of those kids are First Nations. My relatives. My cousin's kids in care. So a lot of poverty, child poverty, are from the communities that I come from. And it's something very close to us. I would suggest that it's time to get some First Nations voices actually into that legislature so that we can actually start to deal with them rather than have these questions attempted to be answered for us. But we can have them answered by us. And I also think, just on a side note, for like my family, for an example, it does real well for us to look after our own kids, and I think the government should be providing incentives for young parents to look after their kids at home when they possibly can.
Scott.
The other night, we had this question the other night, and $1.3 billion is being spent by the provincial government today, every year. And it's really sad because I have no idea where $1.3 billion is going. But I'll tell you, one thing that I will be doing is I will be looking into it, because you are absolutely right. There's about 30,000 of these children that are in poverty, and we need to change this. This is British Columbia. And I think that if we break that all out, it's a lot of money that's not going to the right people. It's more top down, and we need to eliminate that top part.
Thank you. Gary.
British Columbia has the highest or second highest child poverty rate in Canada over the past 10 years. Child poverty is not just a First Nations issue. In terms of daycare spaces, we're going to be reducing the fees for existing licensed daycare by 20% and increasing the number of spaces. We'll also be building 6,000 units of affordable housing over a 4-year term, fully costed, and we'll be providing earnings exemptions for people on social assistance so they can reintegrate back into the workforce.
Thank you. Rob.
Hello, my name's Rob Pingle. I'm a school trustee, and my question regards education. I appreciate that the government is spending more than ever before in education, but with the changes in the last budget, such as increase in MSP premiums, there is increasing cost pressures on our school districts to pay for the things that need to be paid.
10 seconds to ask.
How will you deal with the increased cost pressures, such as raises for our teachers and QP staff, which deserve to be paid well for the work they do?
Thank you. Adam.
Well, like I said before, Rob, I honestly think that this is one... Look, it's not always about throwing more money at it, but when it comes to giving raises to teachers that have been held for a while, we need to do that. I've seen I've talked to a teacher of mine who has got 3/4 of the way through his career and he blew out, and it wasn't right, and he was so stressed out because of the work that's being done, the work that's being put on him. We need to support our education system more than we need to support anything else.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Scott.
The BC government has many layers, and they're duplicating and triplicating and quadrupling a number of different tasks. I think what we need to do is take a look at that part of the business, or that part of the government, and then start realizing, you know what, there's enough money already in the coppers. Let's just back it all out and allocate the funds where it needs to go. And I think what will happen is we will be able to support every need of the teachers.
Thank you. Gary.
Rob, thanks for the question. Again, the simple answer comes back to funding. If you look at our platform, education, K-12, it's probably the biggest increase in funding that we're going to be providing. And the way we're going to do that is to make the tax system fairer. You're right, there has been a historical pattern of coming to agreements with teachers and support workers and then forcing school districts to take it out of an existing budget. And we're not going to do that. We're going to provide more resources for the school system. We're going to do that by making the tax system fairer.
Thank you. Stephen.
Thank you, Rob. When the BC Liberal government was first elected, the two priorities that they maintained that were not cut for funding and in fact faced increases were health and education. Education is obviously a critical service that the government provides. We have to continue to do that. It's about priorities. I grew up in this school system here on Salt Spring. I have the greatest respect for our teachers and want to see them well compensated. As with everything that government provides, there are cost concerns and imperatives, and we have to make sure that we can afford the things that we do. The importance of that is growing the economy so that we have enough opportunity to be able to pay the services and the service providers.
Thank you. We apparently have 5 minutes left. Is that right, Maddie? 5 minutes. So.
Yes. My name is Raymond Phillips. I have observed the conspiracy that existed between the Hydro, BC government Liberals of Gordon Campbell, and the Accenture, which is a consulting outfit. And
What's your question, please?
The contracts signed with private power producers are losing billions of dollars. How will you propose to stop that fraud?
Thank you. Scott.
You.
Can you make it really fast? We've addressed this a bit before, so can we make them really short because we've just got 5 minutes left?
I would certainly look into it for you, sir. I don't have all the answers on that, but I would be definitely looking into it. And that would be something that, like I say, we got to bring it back to you and get all the information.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Ray. There's an explicit provision in our platform to go through each of those contracts with a fine-tooth legal comb. Now, it is problematic to try and adjust existing contracts. We don't want to create additional liabilities for taxpayers, but we'll be looking at all of them. And going forward, any private producer will be subjected to the review of the BC Utilities Commission to make sure it's in the best interest of ratepayers.
Thanks, Gary. Stephen.
The independent power producer contracts were signed at a time when demand was escalating and growing rapidly in British Columbia, and we had to provide for future use.
Sorry, this is not a debate. I'm sorry. You ask a question. They're answering.
Since then, demand has decreased. We could have found ourselves in a situation like the province of Ontario where they don't have enough electricity to service their homes and their businesses, and they've had to buy it expensively from outside of the province. In the case of contracts like this, you can't always get them 100% right. So there has been a bit of a cost. It's in increasing rates, but it's the best effort by this government to try and make sure that we have electricity available to the province in future.
Adam.
Yeah, thank you. I think that we should. I agree that we should be looking through those contracts when a new government comes in. I think a big issue that we've got is that BC Hydro has been allowed to create deferral accounts where they've kicked billions of dollars into an account at a cost, their costs into an account, and we're not quite sure how we're going to pay for that. And I think that part of the problem and part of the solution that we could have is to have, and the Greens have proposed, a legislative budget officer so that we can actually start costing these projects out and know what they cost.
Thank you. Okay.
My name is Roxy Daly, and I'm in our streets, in our community, there are tons of people with mental health issues. And I just want to know, if you were elected, what would you do? Because we don't have any facilities or help for these people.
Thank you.
What would you do?
Gary. 20 seconds.
It's part of our commitment to restore rural health services. Again, look in our platform, specific provision for those kinds of services.
Thank you. Stephen. Maddie, we're going to go to 20 seconds.
Thanks for the question. Mental health in our communities is absolutely vital. We've undertaken lots of programs in some of the bigger cities where we try to house people with mental health issues so that they can be looked after and cared for. In our smaller communities, maybe we need more work. We have to do more work and get that done, and particularly on this island, probably we have to consider that as well.
Thank you. Adam.
Unfortunately, we've been kicking people with mental health issues onto the streets, creating a homelessness issue. So, I take a bit of exception to the last answer. I will say, though, that mental health and the Green Party platform, we have got a very deep, strong platform on social services that deals with mental health issues. And this is one time I will refer you to the policy book because we've only got 2 more seconds. So,
thanks a lot. Scott.
What I would probably do is I would take a look at some of the facilities that we already have that are vacant and say, you know what, why don't we reconstruct one of these and put in a facility that will help these type of people.
Thank you. The last question, perfect timing.
Hi there, my name is Tiani Peters. I'm a grade 12 student here. My question is very similar to Roxy's. What would you do for the homeless people here on the Gulf Islands? They're homeless for several reasons. They could be mental health, it could be drug addiction. How would you help them create a stable life here on the islands?
Thank you. Stephen, you're up.
Well, I guess we have to look at the cause of the homeless people here on Salt Spring. Many people that I've seen come here temporarily without employment opportunities. So the sooner we can get around to turning the economy around on these islands and providing jobs here, we'll be able to help confront the issue of homelessness. People will be able to afford to actually get somewhere to live.
Adam.
You know what, I don't do this very often, but I understand homelessness from a First Nations perspective. I understand and why that a lot of it is created. I understand homelessness from an urban perspective. I can't answer that question directly to you because I actually don't understand what the implications are and what the challenges are here on an island community.
Thank you.
And that's something that I have to learn more about.
Scott.
I actually have empathy for those type of people, and I would go out there and I would be an advocate for them to see how we can make a better life for them. Not just by giving them things, but maybe helping them with education to actually they could be better citizens amongst themselves.
Gary.
The answer is pretty simple. You provide more housing and you provide more ongoing supports. I've spoken to both of those. Those are both specific provisions in our platform. 6,000 housing units over 4 years. Some of those are going to be on Salt Spring, and I'll fight for some of those being on Salt Spring.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to the candidates who are giving up their lives for 4 weeks for our benefit. Thank you all for coming. Thank you particularly to Maddie and the Student Council for organizing this and for fighting with an unwieldy clock. Don't forget to empty your pockets into the coffers on your way out. Thanks a lot.